What's better than a Rolleiflex camera? Two Rolleiflex cameras. I am back from my trip in Asia. Japan, Vietnam, amazing countries. Was gone for 5 weeks. Everyone is going to Japan these days if you look at YouTube. But I was actually working on some editorial assignments there. So I decided to take my wife and take a film camera, of course. So I took my Rolleiflex. And I knew I was going to the heart of great used cameras, Tokyo. And I also knew I wanted another Rolleiflex camera, a 2.8. And I went there and I purchased this. What this video is going to be about is how to purchase a used camera, what to look for. These cameras now, the desirable ones, the ones that you want, the ones that you want to use, are now 50, 60, 70 years old. So they've been around the block, and there are certain things that you need to look out for when you're getting one of these cameras. I'm going to do another video about how to use these cameras and the usability and all their features, but this is strictly going to be about things to look for when you walk into a camera shop. You see this great camera sitting on the shelf and you go, hey, I'd like to maybe buy that. What should you look for? And step number one is simply the cosmetics of the camera. What does the camera look like? Is the leather all coming out? Is it all scratched up? Is there all kinds of dents in there? Those are kind of little keys, that telltale signs that this camera's probably been abused, not looked after well. When I got this camera, it is in very, very good shape. There is one little ding at the bottom here. You know, there's a little bit of paint coming off some of the sides, but that's to be expected. This camera is 55 years old. This particular one was made, I think, in 1971, around that time frame. So it's gonna have some wear and tear on it. And quite frankly, you have to be suspect of a camera that is perfect, that looks perfect, that doesn't have a mark on it, because it's a collector camera, which is great, but it's almost always gonna need work, those cameras, because these cameras are mechanical. They're meant to be used. The gears are meant to roll. Things are meant to go in and out. And if they're just sitting there, they kind of seize up and tighten up. And if they're in perfect shape, guaranteed they're going to need a CLA before you can get them up and running properly. So when I walk in, one of the things that I look at is, like I said, is the leatherette coming up. Now, the leatherette on this camera was coming up, and just a little bit on the corners. But as a result, I was able to get a deal on this camera because of that. Other than that, everything else was perfect. One of the things you want to look for is this line right here, this whole focus mechanism that takes the lenses out. When you go all the way out, is it straight? Is this black line straight? Is this silver part straight? That is really important. If it's crooked, it could indicate that the focus is going to be out. Do these corners have big dents? That is a telltale sign that this camera has been dropped, and dropping them on the part that focuses can put everything out of alignment. So you want to watch that. Check the focus. Is it smooth? Does it go all the way out, all the way in smoothly? If there's a little bit of hesitation at some point, then you know that something isn't going smoothly. These cameras should be perfectly smooth. There should be nothing that holds the focus back. See if the aperture dial and the shutter dial works very well. If there's nothing holding them back, if it's nice and smooth, if you can change the shutter speed smooth, if you can change the aperture smooth, that's something that you want to look for. When you fire the shutter, does the shutter fire really easily? You know, is there a hesitation? Is it hard to push down? Those are things that you want to look for. And then, of course, the optics. You want to look at the optics, and you want to see the taking lens, and you want to see the viewfinder lens or the focus lens. Is there separation? Is it all scratched up? Is there fungus inside? Fungus can look like little spider web type of things. It usually happens from the outside and it moves in. Those are things you want to stay away from. You can fix those things, but it's generally a really expensive fix. And that's the other thing. Do you have someone that can work on this camera? I'm really lucky here in Calgary. I have Cosmetic. Gary here, he services all my manual cameras. He can actually service these Rolleiflex cameras. So I knew that when I was going to come back, I was going to give it to him. He was going to glue the leatherette down properly, and then he was going to check the shutter speeds and just give it a once over and make sure everything was working fine. And it actually was, because there's some things you can't tell right in the store. If you can shoot a roll of film through it, put a roll of film through it. I take an old roll of film with me, and I just actually run through the whole roll, and I just throw the roll out after that, just to see if everything is winding properly, if the film is going, if it's not jamming up after frame 4 or frame 5. That's one of the things that you can look for. So I just take an old roll of film with me. The viewfinder, does it pop up really easily? Does the magnifying glass pop up and stay in place and is easy to focus? On my 3.F, I have an older viewfinder and it actually doesn't work very well. I need to get a new viewfinder for my 3.5F. One of the things that this camera came with is a bright focusing screen. A bright focusing screen, like a beady focusing screen, makes the world of difference. I didn't think it would be that big of a difference, but it is. It's over a stop more of light that you can focus. It's so much easier to focus than my 3.5. If you can pick up a bright focusing screen, that's the way to go for sure. It makes these cameras much easier to use. The lever to advance the film, is that straight? Is that bent? All those little signs, if something is bent or doesn't look right, it probably means this camera has taken quite a tumble. And that's fine, but you should be getting a discount. But the Rolleiflexes can range anywhere now from $500 to $5,000. There's a huge price gap. And I'm finding that the mint ones, and in Japan, especially on eBay, when people say mint or mint minus, that really doesn't mean mint. That really means nothing. They just use that word to try to entice you. Mint, for me, means it's in perfect shape. There's absolutely no marks on it. There's nothing wrong with it. These older cameras are going to have marks on them. You know, that's just the way it is from that time frame. But if it looks like it's been abused, then I would probably stay away from it, because you don't know what it's like on the inside. I knew that Gary would be able to glue the leatherette down really easily. He uses proper contact cement to do it. Don't use crazy glue to do it. That will really weld this leather to the metal. It'll be impossible to get off if you have to service these cameras. It'll all be destroyed, so you would have to put new leatherette on it. So you don't want to do that. There are a ton of different types of cameras. There are everywhere from A, B, C, D, E, F, and the GX cameras. The GX cameras were the most modern cameras, even made to 2000. I bought one of those from Japan. It came in. The focus was so off that I had to send it back, and I got my money back. But again, you know, they said it was a mint camera, said it worked perfectly, and it didn't. I really tell people that if you're going to try to buy one of these things, go and actually try to use it, try to see it, try to, you know, play with it, see how it works, see how all the knobs work. Everything should be perfectly smooth when you're going to use this camera. And check the shutter speeds. I go all the way from 1 second all the way to 500th of a second. And then I open up the back and I look at the shutter speeds if they're firing. And in the back, you can see, if you hold it to a flash of light, you should see a little flash of light when that shutter goes off. And if you don't see that flash of light, that means the shutter speeds are not working, and that's a problem. So the shutter is going to have to be rebuilt. Same with the aperture. Does the aperture blades close smoothly? And you can see that through the back in the lens. And do they open smoothly? Do they have oil on the blades? That's an issue that you're going to have to get looked at. And again, not that you shouldn't buy these if it has those things, but it's going to be an issue that you're going to have to address at some point. This particular camera comes with a light meter. I checked the light meter against a digital camera that I had with me, and it was very accurate. Now, it's not to say that you shouldn't buy a camera if the light meter's not working. A lot of these light meters, again, they're as old as the camera, so they're at the point where they are stopping to work. And when I work out in the field, I am using a light meter, a handheld light meter all the time, so I'm not relying on this. But if it does have a light meter, it's nice to have that meter working, that you can just use that for quick light meter readings, and depending on the situation that you're in and the light that you're reading. So the light meter is something to check out against either an app on your phone or a digital camera when you're looking at these cameras. These cameras will come in one of two configurations, either with a planar lens, which seems to be the most desirable lens, or a Zenitar lens. Now, I have friends who have both cameras, who have used both cameras, and have told me once you take a picture, you really cannot tell the difference between the two. They said if you're shooting 400 ISO black and white film and you make a contact sheet or a print, there's no way you're going to be able to tell the difference between the two. They're also going to come in a 2.8 lens or a 3.5 lens. And for me, I already had the 3.5 lens. I wanted a 2.8. And part of the reason is a lot of the work that I do is I work on that edge of light where light has just gone down and there's not a lot of light left. And I was finding with the 3.5, a lot of times I was going down to 1/8 of a second, 1/4 of a second, and having that 2.8 can mean the difference of shooting at a 1/15 of a second or at an 1/8 of a second. And that's a big difference, or even at 1/8 or 1/4 of a second. So I really wanted that 2/3 extra stop. It's gonna make a difference. Working with these cameras is great. So many great photographers have used these Rolleiflex cameras. Irving Penn, Richard Avedon, Eve Arnold, Lee Miller, Helmut Newton, the list goes on and on. And that's not saying that's the reason why you should get one of these, but it gives a sense that great photographers have used these because of, I think, its simplicity and that square format and its sensibility and how light it is to use. And you only have one lens and you can concentrate on the subject, which is what I really love. I love the format. There's no electronics to go wrong. They're easy to travel with. They're light. They're conversation stopper. People come up to you and say, hey, great camera. And you can start talking with someone and say, hey, can I take your photograph? It's just a wonderful tool. But I'm going to show you some work that I did in Japan right now with these Rolleiflex cameras. And I ended up getting this camera at Map Camera in Tokyo, and all kinds of camera stores in Tokyo and in Japan have these. That seems to be where all the really good cameras are these days. As always, just want to say a big thank you for watching my videos. And as you can tell lately, I've been smitten with the Rolleiflexes. They are great, great photographic tools. And I hope this video helps you. If you're thinking about buying one, really see if you can get some hands-on time with one. It will save you a lot of hassle in the future. As always, thanks, and I will see you next time. From Vietnam, we're moving the YouTube videos to the part of our Vietnam trip. See you next time. Cheers.